She went to the doctors, got told, don't be silly, everything's okay. So I'm a dad of two. I have Jude, who is 14, and Tommy, who's 11, and they're both autistic. They were both diagnosed really early, especially compared to these days where there's quite a long waiting list. So they're both diagnosed before they were 2.
Oh, wow.
They're both non-speaking. They go to a special needs school.
The realisation that maybe things are going to be a lot more challenging for you as a parent. How did you manage letting go of some of those expectations?
So a few years back when me and their mum separated, we decided that the best thing to do was to split the boys up so that they would get the one-to-one care that they need. It's about finding ways to enjoy life and be happy. Like I said, there's been some incredibly low moments over the years, and I would have given anything for them to be as happy as they are now.
And we're rolling. Welcome to the Parenting Truths podcast. Today I'm joined by dad of 2 and founder of Stories About Autism, James Hunt. Thanks for joining me today, James.
It's my pleasure, Tom. Thanks for having me.
So I really wanted to chat to you today because someone who's growing a following in the parenting space on social media, I'm noticing that there's a lack of diversity in the content people share, and I'd include myself in that. Often I share about my personal experience, but I share about meltdowns and tantrums and emotional regulation. And now and again, I do get comments from parents that say this just isn't relevant to me or my child whatsoever. And I'm always at a bit of a loss at how to respond. So I want to chat to you today about your journey with you and your boys, but also chat to you about how social media makes you feel and what content creators could maybe do to be more inclusive and help raise awareness around autism and neurodiversity in general.
Sure, yeah, I think that's a really good starting point. I don't ever expect people to share really experiences that they're not going through. You know, that there's not really much that you can talk about autism if it's not relevant to your life. You can do what you're doing, which is great, is talking to someone who has that experience. But what I share, there's plenty of things that I can't talk about, or if you're looking for a certain thing that's not relevant to my life, then yeah, you're in the wrong place. And I think the beauty of social media is that there is something for everybody. You just sometimes have to look for it. But yeah, a lot of the bigger social media accounts are, I guess, your more typical parenting journey, and can look like a bit of a highlight reel at the time of how beautiful and wonderful life is, which I guess can be challenging for some people to see all the time. But if you start looking, like there is a big autism community on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, with quite diverse families in it as well.
That is a problem with social media. It's always a snapshot from highlights from people's lives, isn't it? And then obviously a filtered highlight. But I think what I really like about your Instagram is it looks like there's absolutely no filter. You literally get the camera out and you just share what's happening. You're open and honest. And it was really eye-opening for me. And that led me to your blog and your really in-depth articles that you've written about various experiences with your little ones. So yeah, thanks for being so open and honest about your journey.
Yeah, I think it's important, and it's obviously in the more challenging moments, I don't have my camera out. The photos or videos that I share will be of a happier moment, but I'll also talk about the harder times. And I think that is something that's getting the right balance of showing. On my blog, I always try and be honest, and there are some very difficult days, but there's some really happy and amazing days as well. And I never want what I share to come across as too negative, but I also don't want it to be completely overly positive, because I know that that's not reality. I often describe that parenting, I think for anyone, is a bit of a roller coaster, where we have some amazing moments and then some more difficult moments, and that's certainly been the case for us too. And I just try and show that, and just be honest that this has been a tough week, and this is why it's been a tough week. But we've also had this amazing little moment of progress, which is so encouraging for the future, and that's kind of how I approach it.
Yeah. For those that aren't aware, I usually start with my guests by going back to the beginning of their parenting journey, but are you able to give a little introduction to where you are now and with your
Sure.
two boys, and what sort of motivated you to start Stories About Autism?
So I'm a dad of two. I have Jude, who is 14, and Tommy, who's 11, and they're both autistic. They were both diagnosed really early, especially compared to these days where there's quite a long waiting list. So they're both diagnosed before they were two.
Oh, wow.
They're both non-speaking. They go to a special needs school. So it's been a really different experience to what I was expecting as a dad. And a lot of the moments and experiences that I just took for granted that they haven't happened, or they've taken a lot longer to happen. And it's a really different experience when, I think when we're going to become parents, we assume that our kids will be able to talk, right? That we'll have, they'll start to develop typically sort of 2, 3 and talking more. And as they grow, we'll be having deeper conversations, and maybe in the teenage years they'll stop talking to us for a while, but we'll get back to having some good conversations too. And that's been a real challenge, and it's hard sometimes to watch as a parent how difficult it can be for Jude and for Tommy to, I guess, almost to function in the world, and because it can be quite confusing and overwhelming for them at times, and with such limited communication, it can be hard for me to know, or for anybody around them to know exactly what's going on. And that, yeah, like I said, that's been something that we keep working on, and it's improved over the years, and we have our own ways of communicating, but it's something that's definitely a challenge still. Like I said, they go to special needs school. We've got a little bit of a unique circumstance that they always really struggled around each other. So Jude is very noise sensitive, and he always struggled with other children. So other children would just set him off and could cause him to have a meltdown, just because the unexpected noises, the unpredictability of their behaviours. So having a brother who's 3 years younger than him was really difficult, because Tommy, in his personality, is loud and unpredictable, and that's just Tommy, that's how he is. And whilst there was never any sort of purposeful arguments or anything like that brothers may have, or any fights or anything like that, Jude just found it really, really difficult to be around his brother. And we had a real tough few years of Jude having meltdowns and being quite physical towards himself. And so a few years back, when me and their mum separated, we decided that the best thing to do was to split the boys up, so that they would get the one-to-one care that they need, and they'd also have a sort of happier environment to live in, which was a really difficult decision. It's clearly not the normal way of living and how you expect to raise a family. And there's days where it's heartbreaking that they haven't spent that time together, or that we're not able to spend that time together. But it's also been probably the best thing we could have done. There's been so much progress. They're both so much happier. And to end that section on a happier note, they are starting to spend more time together now, through school working really hard to sort of improve their relationship. And as Jude's gotten older, he's much more able to cope around other kids and other children. And he used to really struggle at school, but now he's happy and he gets on with his classmates. So as he's been better able to cope, we've been able for him and Tommy to spend more time together.
And I think that's another thing you probably take for granted, that when you have siblings, they'll grow up with this unconditional bond and connection between the two of them. So I can imagine that was quite a major decision for you and your partner to make. Hopefully now you've seen that was actually the best decision for them both. And are you noticing their relationship come a lot stronger? Or are they more tolerant of each other when they're around each other?
Yeah, interestingly, when they were younger, Jude used to literally leave the room if Tommy would come into the room. We'd have sort of one upstairs, one downstairs. We'd go to the park with one of them and the other one stay at home, and then swap over. All these things to try and help them have the best possible day. And more recently, like I said, Jude's much more able to cope around his brother, and he's actually really interested in other kids now. Whereas before, he always wanted to be away from them. He's now interested in what they're doing. So Tommy loves to bounce a ball. So Tommy generally has a ball in his hands at home pretty much the whole time. And Jude now watches, and you can see him smiling, really interested in what Tommy's doing as he's bouncing the ball off the wall or bouncing it on the floor. Jude's there in the background, sort of happily, getting quite excited about what he's doing. And it's small things like that that clearly that their bond is improving, and school have been amazing with that they every week they spend a couple of hours together, maybe having a music lesson or on trampolines or the soft play area or the sensory rooms, just giving them different activities to try and create these happy moments and shared moments so that they can look at each other and think, it's okay when we're together. We have fun and we get on. So that's over the last probably year that's been something that's making a big difference at home as well.
Yeah.
So
you talked a lot about the meltdowns and the social situations. How do you find the balance with activities? So let's say weekend is usually family time and families go off and do things. How do you find the balance between keeping them safe at home but then also giving them the best they can have in terms of activities and experiences? How do you find the balance and make the call as to how to go about things?
It's a good question. It's really tricky. It's really, I think whatever decision you make, you either feel like you're not doing enough or you're trying too much. And if you go somewhere and it goes wrong, then obviously you blame yourself that you shouldn't have pushed them. And if you stay at home, then you feel like you're not, like you said, not giving them enough opportunities to have these experiences. We're lucky in that Tommy really enjoys going out and doing different things. Interestingly, he doesn't cope with it as well with me or his mum, but we have a carer who works on a Saturday with him, and she takes him out with her family to access the community. They'll go to farms and fun fairs and parks and all kinds of amazing things he does every Saturday. Their kids will be with them, and I think he sort of copies what they're doing, and he's created a really good bond, and he's having those friendships which are allowing him to do these different experiences. And then it's also opening him up to be able to do more with us too. Like one of the videos that is quite popular on my site is when me and Tommy go to the supermarket and he is in control and he picks out all the things that he wants in the shop. And a few years ago that just would not have been possible. It would have been way too overwhelming for him. But now it's a fun activity for him and he really enjoys it. With Jude, where obviously he had more challenges around other children, it's been very tricky. Had a really good spell sort of just before the pandemic where we were going to a swimming club. We was going to a special needs trampolining session on a Sunday morning, and we had these sort of regular activities. That all stopped with COVID, and they actually have never started again, those two activities. And during that time, losing school, losing the way the world changed for all of us, it kind of coincided with puberty and Jude becoming a bit more anxious again about being outside. Getting him to experience activities has been quite difficult recently. Again, it's something we're working on, and with the help of school, I think he's in a much better place now to be able to do these things again. But yeah, for Jude, he spends a lot more time at home. We'll go for long drives and he'll listen to music because he's safe there. He's not got to worry about, he loves going to the park, but if there's a loud child there or a dog comes near him or, you can't control these things. And I think that's one of the challenges. You try and control the environment around them as much as possible, but there's some things you just can't control. And if a dog coming near him means he ends up screaming and crying, and then he obviously doesn't want to go to the park next week again because that's gone wrong. So it's it's a tough choice to make sometimes, and you can feel like you're keeping them safe at home and doing all the things that they enjoy, but yeah, you're then limiting the progression and the things that they might be able to experience too.
And do you find you, as a parent, you get a better handle on what you can and can't do? Like, now you said they're getting older and they're reaching puberty, or is it a constant evolution for yourself to just keep rolling with their development and figuring out what works this weekend and what doesn't?
I think it's a combination of both. I think I know them so much better now, clearly, than I did, when autism was new to me, when there was so much to learn. They've taught me so much. I think all of us as parents, we learn along the way, right? We try things and we have an idea of what sort of dad will be or what sort of mum will be, and we adapt along the way. So I think it has got a lot better. Often for autistic people, they really enjoy and thrive on routine and need that certainty of knowing what they're going to be doing next and doing the things that they're comfortable with over and over. Finding that routine firstly and figuring out what works, but then also it's a fine balance between being stuck by that routine or expanding it sometimes too. And Tommy's very routine based. A lot of his week is the same thing again and again and again, but there's also moments where we can try new things and have different experiences, and yeah, it's finding that balance. And I think over the years, one of the things I've learned is to let them lead the way. I think we have timelines in our head of how much time we should devote to things, or how long until we change something. Tommy and Jude have always shown me they may be able, they may have difficulties communicating, but it's clear when they're ready to try new things and able to do new things. And some weekends it's right, let's stay at home and keep everything simple, and some weekends it's clear that okay, we can try this for an hour and we can do something different. And I think that just comes from experience and knowing your children more as they develop.
And when you try new things, you talked a few minutes ago about doing activities where maybe you don't have as much control, going to the play park, for example. Do you, as a parent, get anxiety about those things, and do you feel supported with the other parents around at the time, or do you feel judged quite often when your little ones maybe do get triggered and have a meltdown?
Definitely feel anxious so many times. Like there's like so many memories coming flooding in now of different moments of where things have happened. But yeah, I think that is one of the challenges for when your child is autistic or has a disability, and that it's not as simple as okay, well, we're going to go to the beach on Saturday, and isn't that going to be fun? We're all going to, and you just know it's going to be okay. We never really know if it's going to be okay, because it can hinge on one moment that can ruin everything. And so yeah, I think one thing I've struggled with is even when we have the best times, it can be hard to relax and enjoy it, because you're constantly looking out for, is that dog going to get too close? Is there a potential trigger that could change all of this? And it's only really when you get home and safe again that you actually relax a little and think, that was a good hour or good day. Now I'm probably a little bit better at it because the boys are older. With Tommy, when I go to the park, Tommy wears ear defenders, so it's quite a visual clue that he's a little bit different, and people will maybe react differently to certain behaviours because of that visual clue. But yeah, we go to the park early in the morning because we know it's going to be quieter. We go to certain places because we know there's going to be less people. Definitely in the early days, I felt a lot of judgment, whether that's my own, just the way I was seeing things, but it definitely felt awkward being around other parents, and Tommy or Jude might be doing something completely different to the other kids, and And you can see, sometimes I see even now, like other children looking at Tommy and Jude and just fascinated and you know, trying to figure out why they're doing something. You know, maybe Tommy is flicking sand everywhere, or he's, you know, spinning around on the spot, and that's fine. Like you know, obviously kids have to learn, and you know, they're curious, and they should be. Definitely there's been lots of times where you feel like you just want to get out of there and away from the situation of parents rolling their eyes, or you know, especially if they're having a hard time, if they're having a meltdown, if they're screaming, crying. You know, there's been times where Tommy or Jude have been quite physical, never towards anybody else, but towards me. And most of your focus in that moment is them and their safety, and making sure we get out of that situation as simply as possible. But yeah, it's natural for other people to stare and look when, you know, a child is lashing out at their parent. They're going to stare. And sometimes I've had people come and help, or offer to help,
Okay.
and say, you know, really kind, positive things. And I think other times people just don't know what to do. I think when they were younger, when, you know, they might be 3 or 4, it's very easy for someone to say, like, oh, they're misbehaved, or they're, you know,
Naughty.
if they're laying on the floor in the supermarket screaming, then yeah, exactly, they're naughty. It's, you know, can't you sort it out? Can't you? But I think when you get to, you know, that happening when somebody's 12, you kind of realise that there's something more to it, and maybe you're a little bit less judgmental, and maybe, you know, keep yourself to yourself. But if you'd spoken to me 6-7 years ago, I probably would have been in a place where, yeah, I was struggling with being out in public sometimes. But now it's happened so often that you know what works and what doesn't work, and that's one of the reasons you stay safe to the routine sometimes, is because you know it's just going to be easier for everybody.
Yeah. One of the questions I had, so it doesn't sound like the unpredictability ever becomes really predictable. I guess it's just on you to ensure that you've got routines that they're comfortable with. But I guess, do you see your job as keeping them safe and ensuring that they've got consistent routines? Because some of the really insightful videos you share of your little one going around the shop, I say little one, they're 11 and 14, your boy, going around the shop picking what he wants. I've seen videos where he's climbing on the worktop with his iPad looking for something in the cupboard. So is it your job just to sort of take a step back and let them, and not trigger them, but just keep them safe? I guess boundaries and things like that just have to go out the window for you, and you just need to ensure their safety. Would you say that's paramount above everything?
Because of some of the very low moments we've had, definitely we've had to adjust expectations and adjust boundaries. I mean, we do have boundaries. We do have, you know, things that I try and impress on them that just, you know, that we don't do. But they're also probably a lot more flexible than others. Like you said, yeah, Tommy climbing on the worktop in the kitchen isn't a big deal for me. I probably, you know, 10 years ago, there's no way I would have expected my son to be climbing on the kitchen worktop. But is it a huge problem in the grand scheme of things? No, it's not. He doesn't do it when we go to other people's houses. You know, he does it at home because that's how he accesses the cupboards where I've hidden the chocolate. You know, there's a reason for it that he's doing it. It's definitely choosing your battles, and thinking, where are the points I can impress on him what I want him to do, and where are the points that I'm just more relaxed and like, okay, if this keeps the balance for the day, I'm okay with that. Like I said, it could be like Tommy loves having a ball, and you know, a lot of the time he's bouncing it off the wall inside and the ceiling, but for him that's a real anxiety reliever. That meets a sensory need for him. I've learned, okay, well, we have sponge balls for inside the house because that's less likely to break anything, it's less noisy, and it still allows him to meet his sensory need. You know, both boys love having baths and showers, which I know some parents would be like, oh, I wish my kids love having a shower, but they do. For them, again, as water is a very sensory experience. It helps their behaviours, helps them self-regulate throughout the day if they've had a long bath or a long shower, and that's completely fine. It might be 2, 3, 4 a day, but that helps the rest of the day. So that's just something we do. Definitely along the way you learn that you're going to parent differently than what you imagined. I imagined at 11 and 14 it would be much more about sport and learning games and looking at homework and all of those kinds of things. But for us, it's much more about life skills. It's about learning how to self-regulate. It's about finding ways to enjoy life and be happy. Like I said, there's been some incredibly low moments over the years, and I would have given anything for them to be as happy as they are now. So that's what I always try and focus on. That they've made some amazing progress. They're even to the fact that they're spending time together, and I would have given anything for that. So yeah, I'm really happy with how things are going.
That's amazing. Yeah. On that note, just to talk a little bit about your personal journey, you said that they were both diagnosed a lot younger than maybe people would be today. How did that come about? Was that something that you and your partner flagged with a medical professional, or was it something that they raised with you? How did sort of the diagnosis come about?
So their mum raised it. So Jude was our first. So their mum raised concerns with me when Jude was about 9 months. So she was going to baby groups. She was, making friends with other mums of kids similar age, and she was seeing big differences in how Jude was progressing. He very much, again, whilst he wasn't getting upset by the other children, he didn't really want to interact with them at all. He was very repetitive in the things that he was doing. He was slow to hit his milestones. We actually went for a hearing test because he wasn't really responding to his name, or he didn't really seem. There was times where he seemed quite interested and engaged with us, and lots of times where he wasn't. She raised it with me, and I was the typical, he's a boy, he'll catch up. He was born 6 or 7 weeks early, so it was, he's premature. He's going to be, he's going to be just fine. Don't worry about it. Then she'd raise it again a few weeks later or a month later. She went to the doctors, got told, don't be silly, everything's okay. Pretty much echoing what I was saying, he's a boy, he'll catch up. And this went on, for I'd say about 6 months. And I remember we went on holiday. We went on holiday to France, and we came out of the house we were staying in into the garden. And there was a German couple next door with their daughter, who was about 3 months younger than Jude. And Jude was happily playing, crawling around in the garden. He was about 15 months, no words, still not walking, but just happy playing around. And this girl was, marching around. She was pointing at things and like saying the words out loud. She really wanted to play with Jude. They came into our garden, and Jude was just avoiding her every moment. And I remember the other parents seemingly shocked when they found out how old Jude was. They assumed that he was younger than her, and that just sort of really stuck in my mind of like, okay, maybe there is something here that I need to, I need to listen to their mum and take more seriously. So it was after that holiday, when we came home, we went back to the doctor again and sort of pushed harder. And that just started the process and we were lucky that back then it took about 6 or 7 months, which felt like an eternity. But these days, it's very rare to get anywhere within 2 years. There's just the waiting lists are incredibly long. I get messages like every day from parents who are really struggling because their kids are coming up to school age and they're still trying to get a diagnosis and trying to get support. But yeah, we were just lucky that at the time things seemed to progress a lot quicker, and got our diagnosis quite early. And then obviously with Tommy, we kind of knew what we were looking for, the signs, and it made the process a lot easier because were also in the system. They knew he had a brother who was already autistic, and it just, yeah, it was a lot simpler.
And am I right in assuming that autism affects people in many different ways? So I guess once you get that diagnosis, do you just need to let time progress until you see sort of how it impacts their social interactions? How did you manage that?
Yeah, so I mean, you're 100% right. It's a very, it's a vast spectrum, and you'll have people who are autistic who, lots of adults are getting diagnosed as autistic these days in their 40s, 50s,
Wow.
and never knew they were autistic. So clearly, they're working, they're fully verbal, they just have different challenges and different maybe personality traits. And then there's people who need support, who are non-speaking or have, a lot more troubles communicating, need support with, with lots of different areas of life. So I think that's one of the confusing things for people who don't really know much about autism, is just how vast the spectrum is. And it's hard to imagine your 2-year-old compared to, what does that mean for the future? No one can say, because Jude or Tommy might have started speaking at 3, 4, or 5. They still might. There's still people who start speaking in their 20s, 30s. In the early days, I kind of wanted some answers. I wanted to know, okay, well, what does this mean? What does this mean for the future? And what does this, is he going to talk? When's he going to talk? What? But you come to realise pretty soon out that there's no way of predicting that. But of course, the earlier you get a diagnosis, the earlier you can potentially access support and start to teach and develop in different ways. It's great to get an early diagnosis. I wouldn't say it's so much about sitting back and waiting to see what happens. It's more, with that diagnosis, you can start to access support and potentially access the right school or support at school. Because there's plenty of autistic kids who will be in mainstream school. There's plenty of autistic kids who will be in a special needs school. But it's about what's right for the individual. And I think that's something that, I've learned, and largely through Tommy and Jude, is they're two very different boys. They're both autistic, but they're both very different. And what works for Jude doesn't necessarily work for Tommy, and vice versa. Some days you wish it was simpler, and you wish there was okay, you're autistic, do this, because this will help you progress. But it's much more complicated than that.
Yeah. And you spoke earlier about those expectations new parents have of how their children will grow and develop, and the things you'll do together. Was there a moment for you when your kids were younger that you sort of had the realization that maybe things were going to be a lot more challenging for you as a parent? How did you manage letting go of some of those expectations?
I think all parents who, if your child is autistic or has a disability, you have to go through a period of sort of coming to terms with that and accepting that, and we do that in different ways and on different timescales. It's something that still happens even now. There'll be a milestone, like Jude should be going into year 11 next year. I mean, he is going into year 11, but he should be going into year 11 and doing GCSEs. And so there's always a sort of constant reminder, but it affects you differently. Whereas maybe when he was 4, it was still very raw and emotional. Now it's something that just comes into your mind. It's there for a while and it goes again. But yeah, there's moments. I think choosing the school was a big one. We went to look at mainstream. So you start looking at 3, 4. It's really hard to imagine what your child's going to be like, because he wasn't talking, but he could have started speaking in a few months' time. He could have, so you're trying to make that decision and look and think, okay, well, if he went to a mainstream school with maybe one-to-one support, or, would he cope? Would that help him learn? Would that bring out the best in him? And like I said, it was very soon after going around and maybe seeing a classroom of 20, 30 kids of, that sort of age, and just realizing how how different Jude was developing at that age, and then going to see the special needs schools. And we were very, very fortunate with the school that we got, who have always been amazing. And it just felt like from day one that, okay, this is the best place for him, like that they're going to do everything they can to help him. But it's still an emotional process that you go through, and it could be seeing kids of his age who he went to baby groups with, and we're friends with the parents, that they've joined a football team, or we live in a town right by the river, and they've started sailing, and they're doing all these different things. So there is like a constant reminder, and that sort of going back to the first question about social media, that sometimes doesn't help. Seeing what your friends and family get up to, and realizing that you've stayed at home again this weekend and not really done much. Definitely over time, I think you adjust, and you almost create a new kind of normal of what your normal life is, and what your family's normal life is. And like I said a few questions ago, that for me, I think we had such lows that I'll drive around for 6 hours a day with Jude listening to music if that means he's happy. Like that's all that matters. And of course I'd love to be at a barbecue and go to the birthday parties, or go on holiday for 2 weeks and sit on the beach together. But the reality is, if he's smiling, then that's okay with me too.
Yeah. And with the social media side of things, you've obviously turned it around, in as much as you've got hundreds of thousands of followers across the various social channels. You've got a really interactive blog where you pull people into your life. Have you turned it into a space that is quite therapeutic for you? Like, would you call that your creative space, or your outlet to sort of share your story and know that you're helping other people?
Definitely. I mean, I've been doing it for 6 years now, and initially it was purely to explain to friends and family. I used to find it really difficult to talk about without getting emotional. I wouldn't see friends or family for weeks, months at a time. Then I'd meet some of my mates, we'd go to the pub, I'd have a few hours off. They'd say, "Oh, how are the boys?" I'd say, "Yeah, they're fine." And that would be it. You don't really go much deeper than that. And I could sense that my friends didn't really know what to ask, and I didn't know how to try and explain in 5 minutes in a crowded pub the realities of what life is like. And I'd found a lot of benefit myself in reading other blogs, and getting to know families who are like mine. And I think that's really important for all walks of life, that we're able to go online and see people like ourselves, and see people living lives similar to ourselves, because it helps us realize we're not alone, right? That's what I felt massively when I first sort of stumbled across a few autism blogs. And I just thought, okay, well, if I can share a little about Tommy and Jude, about what happened today, next time I see friends and family, we've got like a starting point of where to go from. And that's what it was. It was, I shared a few posts. I think there was a wedding or something like a month later, and the conversations were so different, just because they felt like they had a bit of background and a bit more understanding, and I felt more comfortable talking about it. And yeah, I mean, since then it's grown, and it's been incredible. It has been really therapeutic for me, especially I'm a single dad. I have to stay at home a lot, so life can be quite isolating at times. So sharing what's going on in a post, and then also a lot of the messages I get, and talking to people who from all around the world, who just have similar experiences and just understand, and who are asking me questions, and I'm able to try and help them, and they're listening to me when I need to vent as well. And it's I've met some amazing people, had some amazing experiences because of social media, and yeah, it's given me some really good new friends too.
Social media does get a bad rep on the whole, but I think if used positively, and as a positive tool, it can definitely have a positive impact on your life, but also the lives of the people you reach, because it's more, like you said there, about the people that you connect with and the connections you make, because subconsciously you do befriend people through social because you meet people that are on similar journeys or have got similar views to you. So it's really amazing to see. It looks like it was just such a natural and organic thing for you. Like you started sharing for your friends and family, and then it just organically grew, and now you've got hundreds of thousands of parents that seem to really enjoy engaging with your content.
Like I said, I never imagined that's what would come from it. I think two things. I think social media is what you make of it, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
We can choose to follow or we can choose to unfollow. We don't have to keep seeing those things in the feed that upsets us. We can be very selective with what we look at each day. Yeah, it's been incredibly rewarding. It's given me a sense of purpose, and not only am I, trying to be the best dad I can for Jude and Tommy, but I'm also realizing that just by sharing, and I'm helping make people who have no connection to autism more autism aware, and for those who do have that connection, just feel like they're not alone. And it can be as simple as, especially in the early years, of, oh, he does what my son's doing, or I've had that feeling too, like I'm not an awful parent, I felt like that too. And I think that's really powerful, and it's really given me a sense of purpose. It's, I get to do fun things like this and have a chat and just talk about life.
What you said there, I think capturing people that are maybe at the start of their journey, maybe their little one has been diagnosed with autism, being able to go on your website and see a huge backlog of posts. You've got a podcast, articles, you've got all of your social media content. It sort of lets them know that things will be okay. So yeah, what you're doing is really powerful. So yeah, thanks for being so open and sharing what you share.
Thank you.
So to close out, I've been asking my guests 3 quick fire questions. So I'm really keen to ask you these, because I think they'll be really insightful. So question 1 is, knowing what you know now, what parenting advice would you give yourself before you became a parent?
Definitely that be prepared that life might not be what you expected. And I think that applies to to our whole lives, but even especially as a parent, that everything you thought being a parent would be like, it's not necessarily going to be that way. Trust yourself. Trust that you are the expert in your child. You're the person who spends the time with them. You're the person who has all that experience of their personality and what they like and dislike, and just be confident that you know what you're doing.
Yeah. This is an interesting one, and feel free to say nothing, because I think what you're doing is absolutely amazing, and I'm not even sure you've got anything to work on. But what's the one thing you feel you might need to work on as a parent?
I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier, is pushing myself and the boys a bit more.
Okay.
I definitely, there are times where we sit a little bit too comfortably, and part of it is through previous experiences and being worried that things are going to go wrong and the knock-on effects, but also being a bit more positive and believing in myself that I'm going to make the right decision, that we can do more and that we can push ourselves a bit more.
Yeah.
Because my boys have proven it to me so many times, but there's still that little bit of fear of things going wrong that maybe hold us back sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. And finally, what's the best thing for you about being a parent?
The best thing is just seeing your kids happy. It could be anything they're doing. It could be them watching a TV program and laughing. It could be, us playing at the park. It could be whatever the activity is. When your kids laugh and smile, it's just the best thing. So that is always, reward enough as a dad to just know that your kids are happy.
Yeah, that seems to be a really common answer from the guests I've had. And regardless of the journey people are on, it seems that everything becomes worthwhile once when they see their little one smile. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think it does. Whether that's, because you're working hard to provide, or whether you're in the sleepless nights, or, all the different stages, everything comes back to, when you have a kid, you want them to grow up and be happy. So seeing those smiles along the way is what keeps us going.
Yeah. So I've said it over and over again throughout this chat, but before we close out, massive thank you for just creating your website, showing up every day and sharing what you share. I absolutely love. You're definitely one of my favourite accounts to follow. Absolutely love following your journey. So thank you for sharing what you share, and if you can, keep it up, because you're definitely helping thousands and thousands of people.
I can't imagine not doing it now. If people say that sometimes, like, you aren't going to stop, are you? I'm like, oh no, there's no plans on stopping. So it's interesting it'd be interesting to see the transition to adulthood, and how things change after school, and I'm sure I'll be going for many years yet.
Cool. I think a lot of people on social media do burn out because they feel that they get this pressure that they need to share. But I think when you make it just a healthy part of your life, and you just naturally share what the journey you're on, I think you sort of avoid that burnout. And obviously don't put too much pressure on yourself. If you need to take a couple of days or a week off, just go with the flow. Thank you for joining me today, James, and definitely it would be great to jump on another podcast sometime soon, maybe towards the end of the year, and see how you and your boys are getting on, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks for having me, Thomas. It's been really fun.
Well, thank you for your time, James, and we'll chat soon.